Every crew needs a Zach. Can you shake that guy?
The legacy tree?
Yeah.
The hands are stepping.
Wet.
There's a Marvel movie, it's Hulk Smash. Okay.
There you go.
What do you do when you're angry, Zach? I go down to the nursery.
Doing a good job.
I go piss pound some root systems. Planned for you for our demo, a legacy, a B&B, and a container, both upland. Both we should expect a little bit of adventitious roots above the root flare, not a lot. But remember, here's red maple from the forest. It's already selecting zone rapid taper roots. See it? And again, this one tore off at 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom. They select based on dynamic loading. If they're protected way back in the back row of the forest, fewer. If you're out on the front end, unprotected, you select more. Okay? This is what we start with. This is a 2-year-old top on the West Coast. This was what comes to us in the semi, bare root. And I need Benny come up here. So this becomes that. So this is a tree that the trunk broke in our package before it was planted. And these shrink really bad once they dry out. So it used to be 32 by 24, but we start with this. It becomes that. And then these two were in for what, a year? These were in the landscape for a year and they got damaged during Ashley for the Arts. They got backed over at the park. But look what the root system became. Okay, that's the progression. How deep are they? Okay, they could have done anything they wanted out at that park. They were on a side hill, they weren't in a low spot. They could have done vertical, boom. All they want to do, okay? You asked about evergreens. Ball and burlap. What diameter were these? These are from Heller's. 32s?
32.
32-inch ball and burlap. Junk. We lost 20%. Hate them. 32-inch ball, 1,000 pounds each. Show me the new flush of growth at the cut root end. So these were spaded right before we bought them. Look at that. That's all we got in that package. Elm from Cherry Street by the Schlitz Brewery in Milwaukee. Soil line was way up here. Went into a sidewalk cutout downtown by the Schlitz Brewery in the redevelopment area. Boom. No new growth at the cut root ends from the spade. These were, I think this is a 42-inch ball. Sugar maple, Mid-State Tech College on sand. Original root system's way down here. Here's soil line, folks. It suffered through a building expansion where they took the fill and piled it even higher on the trunk. But look at how this thing's just trying to hang on. This is a pre-stem girdling root. You see them in it? See the trunk cracked open and rotting? In this age class tree, that's very rare to go out in the woods and see rot on this age class tree. That is a artifact of humans being involved in this tree's life, unfortunately. Honey locust, riparian, wire basket. That piece I passed around today is from this tree with the wire basket embedded in it. When we talk about getting rid of that basket, rust is oxidation, requires oxygen. When you stick it down into low oxygen conditions, this steel is going to hang on for decades. Every chance we get rid of it. Okay? Now what you're going to see today is we, in some cases, are just going to push it down, get it out of that slice where the roots are. Fine with that. Because the balls typically are so dismantled by the time they arrive to you, that they're not solid where we can snip the bottom off and get rid of it entirely. Just tromp it down, get it out of the Goldilocks zone, okay? Questions? Everybody able to make a little jaunt? We're gonna head over to this box elder quick. I wanna show you something up in the edge of the woods. Every time we get together and talk root systems, we need to go where they originate. Okay, I gotta show you a couple things. Get the blood flowing. 8% more oxygen to the brain when you walk around.
Just tell me there'd be walking.
Come on in, wrap around the side here. We worked so hard to get up here, I want you to make sure you see this. So I want you right there. Anytime you doubt what I'm bringing to you, you go out in the woods and you prove me wrong. For almost 40 years now, I've challenged that you find me a stem girdling root in the forest, and I will drive, fly, bike, whatever, get there to take the picture of it with you. Les Werner from Stevens Point and I have made that challenge for a few decades. 0 takers. You will not find a true stem girdling root out here. Now these are Manitoba maple, or as ProCut calls them, money. Or the rest of us call it box elder. Extremely voluntary tree, edges. I think we can agree nobody planted this tree. Just up in Winnipeg, when I'm up there working, you don't joke about it. They grow them there. It's a shade tree. They have a very limited palate. Okay, so you don't joke about it. But here, look at this root flare. Look at that one. Show me the root flare on that. A little, because it's leaning, but it's not at the surface yet. It's still building that around the base. This is when they show up. Between 5 and 6 inch diameter is where you start to see a root flare above ground. I want you to see that. See the spokes of the wheel? It's like an octopus. This thing is grabbing planet Earth with the first 3 to 6 feet from the base with 3 to 12 tentacles, okay? But it's literally clutching the earth. This is 95% of the structural support within my arm span here. That's why when it tips over, you can usually touch the top of the root plate. Okay? It's exaggerated where we're unstable. Bogs, swamps, floodplains where we're high sand content, that kind of thing. So the tree will exaggerate the root plate in those areas. Now, this notion of these spokes of the wheel, you know what percentage of the root system? It's like trying to be a Hall of Fame NFL player. Millions of people are trying to be one. The few, the proud, get to do this. So to get 3 to 12 main spokes of the wheel, thousands and thousands of roots have competed for that job, okay? So they radiate away from the trunk like they're supposed to. Everything else goes every direction. Shigo did this. Above each other, under each other, over each other, through each other, and they're all connected. So the stuff we hear about now about trees communicating and all that, this 50 years ago Shigo was promoting that. A lot of researchers were. Now it's in vogue, okay? But it's the entire forest. This is one solid web of roots. Every square inch is colonized by these trees crisscrossing back and forth across. So once again, you dig into the brownie on a legacy tree, roots go in every direction. They're in the root zone where antlers become moose antlers, where they all live together, they mush together. Nobody kills each other down there. Roots don't kill roots. Try to dig a hole. Try it. Double dog dare ya.
You hear them snapping already.
It's a pain in the try to dig a hole in the forest. But when you cut a new road into the forest to your hunting cabin, it's still this much roots in that O horizon and nothing below. We're about to shoot a video at our hunting cabin. It's all sand on a hilltop, this much roots on sand. Plenty of oxygen below there. But look at that. And you do that everywhere, and they're going every which direction. The job of the flare in the zone of rapid taper is it's a plow. That's why it pushes concrete out of the way. It pushes other roots out of the way from other trees, and they'll either mush together like lava and become a joined root plate, or it'll push so hard it'll snap them. So in that case, yeah, they can kill a root, okay? But the whole idea out here in the forest is stem tissue above ground, root tissue below ground, And we're always wrapping the base of the trunk in root tissue above ground. Leaving them up to their own devices. They've got it all handled. Okay? You ready to go do the real deal now? All right, we're gonna start with the ball and burlap tree. Then we're gonna do the traditional container tree. Then we're gonna rip them back out of the ground and show you root system to root system, how they compare to the legacy tree for root architecture. Ready? All right. Careful, go down the hill. And we want you to be able to understand why you're doing what you're doing to each kind of tree, each kind of package. So, it's got my crew a little on the ropes here because we're gonna plant this as if we're gonna plant it, but when we are about to backfill, we're gonna stop. And then we're going to yank this thing out and show you a root system to root system. So I want to walk you through the steps of us planting a B&B. So let's get rid of the plastic. So for those of you that have bought our blade, this is a prototype we're trying out from CMP Attachments in St. Cloud, Minnesota. This is their Hydra technology that goes in the back of a skid steer bucket for pulverizing sod. It's like a Harley rake built right into a dirt bucket. They modified it and put it into our blade. So instead of using the bed edger to pulverize the sod, we want the sod. I want all that organic matter. A lot of people plant trees by taking the sod and dumping it in the truck and taking it back to their discard pile. That's the best stuff on the site. So we want to reuse it, okay? This thing now eliminated a 165-pound bed edger. And when we're out doing commercial planting for municipalities, we knocked 2 to 3 minutes off per tree. Bud graft union is right at the top of this ball. This ball is real loosey-goosey, so we're not going to be cutting the basket off ahead of time. Sometimes if it's real solid, you can cut the bottom of the basket off before you roll it in the hole to get rid of it. I don't want to do that. Do we got cut root ends?
It's hard to feel these ones. This ball's really coming apart.
See the bud graft union right here? Right at the top of the ball? So we're going to be about 8 inches below. So let's be digging. Jake, give me a 6 to 8 inch deep hole. Let's stop right there. Hydraulics run at full RPM because it's not based on the engine RPM. So you get faster hydraulics with their electric unit, which is pretty attractive to me. God, I was hoping we did fiber optic. I wanted to show you all how to cry at a plant site. Graft union right here. Right there is the bud graft union. So we're 6 to 8 inches below there is where the root flare should be. They use a corn chopper out on the west coast to go down the row of seedlings to cut them off. It's like stubble in a cornfield, and that's where they splice on the bud. I'm not kidding you. It's a corn chopper. That's how they start your tree. How'd we do?
This is the root flare right here. Looks like, I mean, I think probably up here.
All right, let's straighten. Keep taking the crud off.
They're awful nice pants, Jake, when you get dirty.
He drives all the equipment. He hasn't been dirty in weeks. How'd we do for depth?
Yeah, I would cut it down.
Remember, we always want to be slightly high. Always slightly high. Never slightly low, because no matter what we do, we're going to settle a little bit over the winter, pre-thaw, and I don't want a dish. I don't want water accumulating inside this dish. I want to be slightly high. I want to repel water. How many people want us to get the dang air pockets out of this soil as we backfill? What did we just do this morning? Oxygen is the most critical piece to this puzzle. Do not artificially compact and crush your soil particles and get rid of your pore spaces. Why do tree roots grow into a sewer line? Why do they grow into drain tile? Because there's 100% humidity in there. Remember water vapor? So air pockets, the whole notion of eliminating air pockets is so opposite of basic tree physiology, it makes my heart hurt, okay? We want a 7-foot diameter mulch ring. You know what the mulch does instantly? Traps water from evaporating from the soil. Traps your water vapor. That's your first line of water in that tree is trapping 400% more root growth under that wood chip mulch than under turf grass. Some of our grass species actually chemically try to kill tree roots. It's that old prairie versus the forest thing. They don't get along, okay? How we doing?
Excuse me, I got
What?
a question. So you say you don't want
That's fine.
to compact your soil at all?
Do not.
So if we don't compact our soil, like my experience planting trees,
Yep.
they'll, you know, they tip.
We are absolutely staking and strapping every one of these. It's a ball and burlap or a container that we are doing all this to it.
You'd say
We're always
I'd like to
staking and
stake
strapping.
everything
Yep.
until that root, until
A
that
legacy
root system
tree,
gets established.
95% of the time you don't have to stake and strap it.
Yeah.
Certain species get a little loose in shipping. Lindens are always loosey-goosey no matter what they're in. So a lot of times if I got a straight one, it's typically a linden. It's a short list of suspects. But we've never had a tree blow over in our nursery. Ever.
I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, you don't want to compact the soil so that it becomes a barrier for growth.
A little's fine.
You know, but like
You're not trying specifically to get rid of all the air pockets. You'll see us doing this and straightening and tipping and tamping a little bit to straighten and settle. Yeah.
Okay.
I want you to be really, really good at digging that hole though. I don't want you going 6 inches too deep and putting fill back in. I want that thing pancake flat, 6 to 8 inches deep. I don't want to disturb what's underneath there. I don't want settling, okay? So I demand a very high level of precision. If you're gonna run that machine, run it well or get somebody else on it, because after a few days of this, you should be nailing that. You shouldn't need a spotter. You should be pop, pop, pop. Once again, be a little shallow, and if you have to, you just pick it back out, set it off to the side, go down another 1.5 inches. Easy. We good here? I don't want to backfill yet because when we're all done here, I want to pull this root system out. I want to show you it. But this is how we plant B&B. And we use this thing for everything. I don't care whose tree it is, okay? If you're dealing with the grow bags and these other technologies, this is where I just say, call me. One of us will come up and go with your planting crew, boots on the ground. I want you to be comfortable with everything you're dealing with for trees available to you. It's not just about planting a legacy tree. Let's go do the container quick. Question is about staking and strapping. If I'm gonna put them on, I would like to leave them on for 12 months, minimum. You come back to take them off and you wanna test that tree. If it still doesn't feel stable to you, leave them on a second season. We have video on the backside of our website on how I like to stake and strap. There's different ways to do it, but what you want is where it's a little flexible. You want that thing to wiggle in the wind a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that.
Yeah, I want it a little loosey-goosey.
We're gonna do it because that movement stimulates root growth.
Absolutely. All right, according to the tag, I should be digging my hole about 16 inches deep. That's the bud graft union. So I'm saying that the root system is somewhere down here. Why don't you give me a 6-inch deep planting hole? All right, question while Jake was digging was, right now, we don't have a builder for this particular blade. We're testing it, but everything you're seeing with this, from the blade to our platform system of growing trees to our tip tray system of hauling them, is all part of our patent pending. You can look it up on the federal website. It's been published. They've done all my designs. Looks like we might get it. I don't know, but just understand that we want to get paid back for what we've invested in this. Let's take a look inside this critter, okay? So red maple again. Red maple, red maple, red maple. Let's go through your process of loosening that thing to get it out. Let's bring it over by the hole. I don't mind soilless mix if I can top dress my hole with it. I like that organic matter, I like the nutrients. I don't want it in the bottom of the hole. Compressing a little bit does not damage the root system. Getting in a tug of war, you can fracture a zone rapid taper root down because that's a very unnatural action on it. So, all right, what are we gonna do?
He didn't like that.
You're gonna score the sides and call it macaroni? I don't want it. So this is the bud graft unit. So I say we're down about 6 or 8 inches below there is where we're gonna hit actual root system. So let's go ahead and cut down a little bit.
I'm not giving you my knife for that.
Take his knife from me. So if you're going to do that, you want to pull straight out toward you. So the same way, if you've got a huge, mature, you know, champion tree in somebody's backyard that's 100 plus years old and you want to do things there, you want to put in irrigation, you don't cut across the root system, you go in with spokes toward the trunk, in between the spokes of the wheel to do minimum root damage. This is boots on the ground stuff that we can do with you on site. And quite frankly, it's a great way to get me out of the office and get me out of my happy place. So, how are we looking so far? I remember getting my hands dirty, and I don't miss it at all. What are we looking for? I don't want
Radial root.
I don't want roots up where the trunk is. I don't want roots up here. So we've just taken care of that. The decision they have to make is, are they going to go with those adventitious roots? Look at their diameter. They look like they're doing 80% of the job right now. Be careful what you do when you get down into this package. I would be very hesitant to take them off. Yeah. Now, do we have to go underneath the ball? No, I don't care. That's moose antler territory, right? Whatever is down there doing whatever it's doing, I don't care. It'll just become wood. All engulfed in the base of this tree. What I'm looking for is, show me that cut root end right there. Benny. See that? There's a root tip. Did you fracture it? Here's the consequence of trying to pull these things out and try to straighten them into the landscape, is you end up snapping them off. Ideally, I would want to soak this in standing water for 24 to 48 hours, literally in a tub, to hydrate completely, to get it very pliable so they don't do this.
I don't think so. Because that's the product of being in the tub, right?
Yeah.
Right here.
What's that? So what do you want to do? You got 3 adventitious roots coming out above the root flare, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is.
Huh?
There's nothing else under here.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. So our liners from the West Coast, sometimes they come in real vertical because they do cultivation out there. So sometimes they're standing on like 3 or 4 legs vertically, and we have to try to correct that. So I think what we've got is he can put his finger underneath there. So I don't think they are adventitious roots. I think these are the 3 spokes of the wheel. Not very symmetrical by any means. Now, we're not going to backfill. Guys, let's just take the sideboards and the plastic off our tree. And then we're going to transport this one and that one over there next to it, and we're going to compare. Heat it up a little bit. Come take a look. Boom. Where's your paint? Let's paint where the soil line is on this guy right here. Yep. Paint ours.
Yeah.
All right. Where's it? All right, here is, that's a 20-inch diameter root system, one way, because this was the direction of the cultivation on each side, and we are all of, I'd say 14 inches wide this way. That's all you get. That was all that was in that. That was a 28-inch ball. Okay, American nursery stands.
That's ugly.
Is that 28 inches in diameter? All the way around? Absolutely not, okay? Here's our container tree. It's a stretch 16 to 18 inches. 16 this way. That's all. So, let's have somebody hold this guy up. Don't be afraid. Every crew needs a Zach. Can you shake that guy?
The legacy tree?
Okay.
The hands are stepping.
Wet.
There's a Marvel movie, it's Hulk Smash. Okay. What do you do when you're angry, Zach? I go down to the nursery.
Doing a good job.
I go piss pound some root systems. What I wanted to demonstrate here, folks, is, okay, pull it up straight. I need a helper here. One of you guys in the back, pull that up.
Sorry.
All right.
I know you're strong too.
This is the moment, okay? This is what I worked on long before I quit my job, was playing with what we could do with these root systems, what we could produce before they get to the client. So here we are. 32 by 24, fully colonized, right? You agree? We've got, in all four quadrants, we have a very uniform density of root system, right? Show me the flare. Jake's getting dirty again. Getting hazard pay for that, Jake? We should just give you a steering wheel to hold when you're down there.
Right here we are.
So there's flare. So we're at, with the platform, even 8 inches. If it's just above the platform, it's 6-inch deep root system. There's your flare. So here, come look at it. That's not a stem girdling root. That's a root on the root flare that becomes part of the moose antler. I've had people digging around with their pen and giving me that snotty look. That's not a stem girdling root. This thing has never had the trunk below ground, because we know that, because we know how Bailey's grows them on the West Coast. They plant a seedling in their mile-long rows with the root flare at the soil surface so that they can cut it off with the corn chopper, because they know they can't plant their little seedlings too deep. Look at that. I didn't even stage this. This happened naturally, okay? But look at that. This thing just lost 98% of its root system and has to recover in your client's yard. And that's why we didn't want to plant them as arborists, because of the failure rate. Predictable failure rate. Here we are with this thing. Overall, my planting depth right now is a foot deep by keeping the bottom of this package on there. The consequence is, where's the mom's crew? Moms? Where? Well, say something. I'm standing around getting dizzy. If we put this one into that 8-inch deep hole you guys had at that property with the water in the bottom and the gray mottled soil, we're going to have a part of this root system in the zone of death, and it's going to start, there's going to be necrosis creeping up through the ball, because we're killing stuff that has part of its root down in that zone of death. That's why we want to be flat and wide, and never let it do vertical, okay? I have a hand-drawn message from a group of grade school kids that says, thanks for yelling at us about trees. That is in my file in my office. Gotta frame that baby. Do you understand that when I got to Milwaukee and I had 184,000 trees that were 6 to 12 inches too deep, how awful that was? How awful it was knowing that 92% of those street trees that they worked so hard to put in there were doomed. No solution, okay? This is the final chapter of my crusade. After 30 years of trying to get people to undo container and ball and burlap, and what, to get down to this? I got issues, I get it. I'm not right, I understand, but I'm in my happy place, okay? I like being alone and nobody talks to me, that's fine. But that's the result of a life's work. Really goes back to my time with Al Shigo, but primarily the Purdue University experience I had. Unbelievable, life-changing thing, but it's been one step at a time. My first nursery was on frac sand in central Wisconsin, 100% bare root, just to play with root systems. Drove my uncle, the dairy farmer, crazy because he's like, what are you doing? I just wanted to see roots, okay? A progression. I wasn't ready to do this 20 years ago. Didn't know how to do it 20 years ago. Luke Haas was there in the early days of the Mid-State program when the root collection lived there. And we go out in the woods and we dig a tree out of the woods with a hatchet and a couple shovels, because all we had to do is cut the spokes of the wheel and tip the thing over and carry it in the lab and dissect it. But look at this. So it's just simple math. This isn't a research project. We're going to collect more data as we go. But the bottom line is, intuitively, we've got a significantly bigger root system, and 100% of what we're delivering to you is active and working for your client immediately. We have pulled trees out within 3 weeks of planting because the client didn't like them, and they were already 9 to 18 inches out of the package into their landscape. This is my quest also against gator bags. I don't want water right next to the trunk of the tree. I want the root system to go, I got to go find water out there. Immediately colonize the site. Fall planting, love it for most species. When the tree drops its leaves, it's doing 30% of its photosynthesis through the bark. That's why it's green. 30%. So up north where we deal with frost in the fall and spring, the tree says, I know from experience that I got to get rid of my leaves by end of October or they're going to get nuked off, and I want to transfer as much back in as I can. Once it does, like last winter where we never froze, they're making sugar all winter long. They're growing roots. The neat thing about fall is when all the herbaceous stuff shuts down, there's nobody competing with you. It's the one glorious moment for a tree where all the little guys check out for a while and you get every nutrient, every bit of water, and you get the whole place to yourself. You get the run of the place. Fall planting is the bomb, except for certain species. Quercus alba, right? White oak, straight white oak, only wants to grow a root from frost out in March or April until leaf out in May. It has a very specific window. That's why we make whiskey and wine barrels out of it, because it has determinate growth. It says, I don't care what kind of growing season we have, I'm only doing this much, and I'm done. So when you fall plant, we had an experience with Quercus alba. We had to buy B&B in for a project for a city, and it had to be planted outside of that root growth window. And when we hit that hot, dry stuff at the end of the summer, boom, crashed. They're waiting until next spring to grow roots, and you just put them in June. Miss the window. They don't care. Swamp white oak, a riparian, if they're along the river bottom and we get a dry spell and this little part of the oxbow dries up, they will pound that root system underneath that wet spot, because remember, they don't want water. That water's a barrier. When that puddle dries up, boom, they'll push roots underneath there to get to that next hump, and now they're growing again. Heading into the uplands. Questions? We will work with you on any kind of root system you have, any kind of packaging you have frequently. I'll come there and help you with it. Fabric bags, you name it. Fabric bags still have circling shit in there. You got to dig in a little bit.
Is there any concern with settling as the wood decomposes?
By then you have bridged, and all that activity in the rocking back and forth, you got material filling in below. So the air pocket underneath our little platform, I want air. I love air. I don't care about air. It's critical. This was less than an inch diameter 16 months ago. 16 months ago. The only reason we could grow that much top is because all the oxygen get into the root system. I don't want to change that when we plant it in the client's yard. I have been on sites where I literally went a 4-inch deep hole, and what Zach did in knocking that thing off, we can kind of knock the edges off on the brownie, but we can scratch it in. I've had spots where we've had conduit, we've had bedrock, and we scratch them in. We take the bottom platform off sometimes to get even shallower. Biggest thing is your crew knowing why. When you're digging that hole, like the mom's crew, it was, shit, there's water bubbling up from the bottom of this hole. It's gray like your sweatshirt. Gray mottled stinky anaerobic soil just below the black dirt. Stay out. Do not go in there. Do not pound roots down in there. Let's backfill them. So I still want to show you how I backfill that critter, because it's got an asymmetrical roots there. It's funky. I want to show you how we do it. We don't shovel.
Shovel man operator.
Don't do it. Don't do it, Jay.
Now here's a plug for the giant telly on a slope. Is there times where we dig on the hillside with the extended boom, where he can't drive forward, but he can sit with the brakes on and he can push out with the extended boom and do the digging on the hills.
Yeah.
Let's get him out of here so we can see the base of
You guys have for mini loaders?
Intrepid.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got a little Vermeer old 725 that we keep alive.
Sure.
How about you?
We got giant.
Yeah.
Let's show them the flare again.
Intrepids are intriguing though.
All right, come on in.
Yeah,
Get a
all
good look
steel
at this.
construction, easy
Get a
maintenance.
good look at this. So Benny, I don't want it to erode on this, so put a little more back in.
Yeah.
But on that high side. So I want to leave it low on this side. Let's do a little more on that back side there, okay? You can have an asymmetrical backfill, okay? If I've got a low side and a high side, I don't want to bury trunk unnecessarily, okay? So I'll do an asymmetrical backfill. Your mulch is what makes it all better. And by spring with the freeze-thaw cycle, everything levels out. But like I said, we want to be high right now. Ideally on that legacy tree, I want to be 2 inches high in the center, okay? So when we level out by spring, I'm still slightly crowned on that site. And the property owner that goes, I don't want those surface roots, I want to be able to mow right up to the tree. Can't help you. Throw in a little topsoil and shade-loving grass seed from Ace Hardware. There is no such thing. And eccentric growth means you will lose that battle every year you try to add soil and cover that thing, unless you're adding so much soil that you're rotting the base of the tree and you're slowing down the growth and you're killing it. These are great places for a perennial shade garden. Keep your mulch going. Ideally, you'd keep your mulch ring going with the canopy with the drip line. That's not practical a lot of times, but if someone is up your critter about watering, put hosta at the base. Hosta is your indicator plant. When the hosta need water, the tree needs water. You go to our website, here's how we water. a sprinkler that spreads a 20-foot diameter ring of water, that's how I water. I want a ring. We've got a picture. Who was that gal, Ellie? 7 trees on a 1 acre lot. We said, hey, no lawn irrigation. We just said, put a round sprinkler. It looks like you're flying over Texas or Oklahoma with the center pivot irrigation in the pastures. It's 7 green rings. The rest of the yard is dirt brown, but she's watering all 7 trees and it's a perfect circle of green. All I want to see is green vegetation around that thing. And sparing on the moisture. All right, let's put the legacy tree in the ground. I want to pretend there's bedrock down here, so I want you to only go like 4 or 5 inches deep. And I want to peel it off the platform, and we're going to do a scratch-in technique. Okay? And that is, we love planting exactly over the top of the old stump. City of Milwaukee, 110 years when I got there, tree every 30 feet had to go in the same spot. It was the engineer's plan. So when I heard, well, you can't put them back in the same hole, why is that? So back to Purdue. You know how trees grow in the forest so fast? Because they follow the root system of the tree that just died, because when the tree dies, it dehydrates, so it shrinks, creates an air channel. Oxygen, it follows that channel, 100% humidity, and as it breaks down, tons of nutrients. So it can remine that area because now it's releasing all the nutrients from the previous tree. That's how you get through there. You don't go pound through brand new soil and create your own channels, you follow the old ones. So, what these guys just brought up is, it's not necessarily bedrock. Sometimes the stump grinder didn't go down far enough, and the client wants it right there. We just had that nightmare a month ago with the guy. 2 trees, somebody else ground the stumps. Terrible, we moved them, had to move them back. But if they didn't go down deep enough, I like the stump grinder to go down 12 inches with a 48-inch square if it's going back in the same spot. If there's any high spots or runners, go get them. Otherwise, I don't want to destabilize the site. And I want I want to follow that old root system. So that's a spot where we'll peel the platform off the bottom. We'll go real shallow, we'll feather this thing and we'll scratch it in. So let's scratch this thing in. used to plant trees deeper because they wanted them to get closer to the water. I've heard this a lot in my career. They would plant deep because they thought there was more moisture. On planet Earth, I don't know about other planets. On planet Earth, the only time water moves with gravity is when it's saturated. So the last moment before saturation where the water can be pulled by gravity down to the water table is called field capacity. That's as wet as the soil can get before gravity can move it. So up to that point, it's particle attraction. What holds moisture at the surface of the earth is particle attraction, the water binding to the particles. Only when it becomes saturated can water move by gravity down the water table, and only then until it hits field capacity again. Okay? So the notion of there's more water down farther, bull. It's trapped at the surface in the old horizon in the Goldilocks zone. That's what makes life on Earth possible. The fact that water is bound to the particles, and where's my scuba divers? And the fact that oxygen diffuses up. So it creates the Goldilocks zone. The organic matter, the old horizon, is because of decomposing organic matter. The water is trapped at the surface because of particle attraction, and the only other piece of the equation is oxygen. And how do we get oxygen to that surface layer? It's because it diffuses up. Don't believe me? Remember the old miners? They would lower a canary down the hole in a cage. The old miners, you know what they're doing? It's a test for oxygen. If there was gas in the mine, the canary quit singing. Really bad time to be a canary. It's a rough job, man. Going down, hey, singing along. Suddenly it's like, ah. But they were testing for oxygen, okay? Doesn't that seem wrong? Doesn't it seem way too shallow? Okay? When we do the more advanced thing, we're gonna do it when there's no frost in the ground, and we're gonna take this machine or our track loader out in the woods, and we're gonna pop 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, 5 inch caliper red maples and other species, and you're gonna see there's no deviation until they get to where that flare is showing above the surface, that 5 to 6 inch diameter range, and now they're starting to pound down sinker and heart roots where they're getting a little deeper underneath the butt. Not until that point. Let's backfill this thing. After we've done this to this thing by taking it off the platform, then we're more likely to stake and scrap it. Now I want to show you how we stake and scrap. It's based on the Milwaukee system that I was part of for 9 years. And it was, Milwaukee, we did 5,000 to 6,000 ball and burlap trees a year. And we used T-post, fence posts, and 10 or 12 gauge wire, and the fabric strapped in front. Almost got him. Bet he never saw it coming.
He was walking into it.
What's your name? Batman.
There's the fiber.
Yeah, fiber optic. We did a bundle this big of communication in Cedar Rapids a week ago. Everything was marked, even the white flag saying all clear was right there. I told my crew, take video. Can't have enough evidence here that it wasn't us.
Yeah, that new fiber isn't marked real well.
So when do you choose to leave the wood in and take it out?
Always leave it in, only when we got a restriction on depth when we peel it off. Now once again, we're high and fluffy, and by the time the mulch is on there, we're this high. By spring, we're flat. So you just got to trust the process here, folks.
Another thing we always do when we're planting is once I get the backfill raked out, I always come back in again and make sure that around this immediate area around the root flare, I just pull off any extra fill that's going on top of the brownie. You can tell really quickly when you get to the brownie, so I just always do that to make sure that we're not starting to accumulate dirt and mulch against the trunk of the tree here. Because we're going to put mulch on here again, so I'm going to do it twice. I do it after the backfill's raked out, and I do it after the mulch is raked out, just to make sure we're maintaining the grade right here so we're not getting accumulation of material right here right after planting.
This tree should be locked into this landscape within 3 to 4 weeks. It has enough root growth outside of what we just put in the ground to lock it in place, and it will not move. So we do recon on these big city projects we've done in the last 2 months. We've done 291 in Stillwater, 250 in Richfield, 500 in Cedar Rapids. We want to do a quick check on them in the next 2 weeks because we can still move them. Once they've been in a month, now we got to use a stake and a strap to pull them straight if they've deflected a little bit. So we want to make sure we're back around pretty quickly to check on them. When in doubt, stake them. Beef where you're at, and you and Luke, it's that soup over by Marshfield. You know that you got sites that are just unstable, so mushy that you might be staking and strapping and just preemptively because you don't want that call back 3 weeks later because it deflected slightly in the wind. But it's a very rapid lock. We call it locking, where it locks in. Let's look at a hillside here. We had a question on the hillside planting, and I wish I had video because when we planted along this highway out here, the ball hitch on that giant was in the ground at the bottom of the hill, and we were digging with the teleboom. We had that thing standing vertical in the ditch.
A giant downhill? Yeah.
On this one, I think he done it from above. That ditch over there, over there we did it where he was in the ditch pointing up and he did the teleboom into the side hill. But the biggest thing is, whether you're above or below, is he wants a perfect check mark. So he wants to come in, if he's on the top side here, he wants to go in vertical and then push across. I want a perfectly level shelf, so when I set this on here, it can't slump. This is where you do not want to disturb below that package and have to backfill because this thing's going to tip on you. So that's the beauty of operators like this crew I have. Perfect. You know, with B&B and stuff, it's really hard to keep those things from slumping and deflecting at some point after the planting. So check mark. In this spot, the root system being at the surface like it is, will adjust to this incline because we don't grow them in nurseries like that to match them to an incline at the site. So this thing has to adapt. So ideally we're going to leave a little dish on the back. If it's steep, if we were down here further, I'd really want a little bit of a sidewall up there. And the root system will adjust to that and grow up the hill. And because of that root flare, it'll adapt to that and it'll keep that trunk tissue protected on the backside the whole time. Homogeneous backfill. And the whole idea of not hauling stuff back to the trailer to take off the site is the math. The brownie that's inside our package, the volume of that root system, if we're 2 inches high in the center of our hole and we do a 7-foot diameter rake out, the displacement of our root system is eaten up with raking that soil out to a 7-foot diameter hole. So I'm not digging all the way out to 7 feet, but I'm using it as an area to drop soil into. And the math works out the displacement is if I'm 2 inches high, I can use up that backfill and not have to take anything back to the truck. Sometimes if you're on a hillside, your first slice might be grabbing a chunk of sod in one piece on the blade and taking it to the truck and dropping it in because you don't have as much room for your backfill when you're on that chuck-shaped hillside. So if I'm shaving on that bottom side, I don't need a lot of backfill. So if I've got to take anything away, I'll take a slice of sod just because it's easy to get out of there and run it back with the blade and drop it. Where are we staking? All right, let's do it. For those of you doing a lot of ball and burlap, we use this a lot on the balls where we can cut the basket off really quick. Instead of the bolt cutter, I'm trying to get those handles down there. And this is really great for twine and burlap because nothing dulls a knife like twine and burlap. So this is 90 seconds with this little guy to get the top of the basket off and to get the burlap cut around and your twine cut. Remember, tool construction, it's a cutting blade, not a grinding blade. All right, so the T-post, I love it. Get them anywhere. The dimples point at the tree because the puller, the handle is over here and it grabs the dimple on this side. So make sure the dimples face the tree. It's really hard to get them out if the dimples are facing out. You got to get the handle in by the tree.
Ron, what direction do you want these going?
So if I've got it, like if I'm planting street trees for a city, between the sidewalk and the curb, then I want the stakes running between the sidewalk and the curb, in line with the road, parallel to the road, okay? Here, horse apiece. If I know I've got a real wind tunnel, I want one stake upwind, and I want a stake higher, strap higher on that side, and go on the downwind side with the lower stake, or lower strap, okay? If you put the straps at the same part of the trunk, all the load is there for that tree to snap off. If you spread them by 8 to 12 inches, you just reduce the load on the trunk to 25%. Don't give it an opportunity to break. Let's do it. Question is distance from the tree. I want the stakes to stay outside the brownie. I don't want them to go through my package. So that's one issue, okay? If I use my arm as a guide, then it's a wingspan for wire. Bring it back to center, crimp it off, goes through. Typically the further out the better, but always inside the mulch. Don't mess with the lawnmower, people, okay? So we're gonna pinch here a little bit. You're a little over center. So we use a alignment plier. We're going to twist so that nobody can undo it with their hands. It's the old Milwaukee thing. It's just don't give anybody an opportunity to mess with your stuff. You know the alignment plier? Alignment plier? Oh boy. And we tap what we cut off back into there so no one can get snagged on it. We like to go above and below, 2 wraps around the post before we crimp. I would go above it. Anytime you can use one of these to catch it, I would do it. The grommets, and what's that? That's Amazon.
They're textile, right?
Yeah, they're fabric with the grommets, so it spreads out the load on the cambium. So in Milwaukee, it was a nursing home out in Colorado that made them as a fundraiser. We bought them all from there.
Oh, cool.
But you can get them on Amazon now. But the grommets with the strap spreads that load out. It's perfect. Cheap, cheap.
What are they called on Amazon? What are they called?
Tree straps.
Tree straps.
So. Now the final thing Jake is doing here is he's going to torque it. He's going to hold the grommet there. He's just going to torque it. Now the heavier gauge wire, when you do that and you torque it, it wants to stand there, it won't sag. What you want is to make this thing bulletproof. So if the wind's blowing and it's moving, what you want, you don't want it to sag and grab and pull it off kilter. So. So a little gap makes a huge difference on the load on that tree. If you put them right at the same spot, it wants to snap right there. But this is the key. This whole thing can still move. You plant it straight. You hold it straight with straps and wire. I hate it when I see a crew, not my crew, when I see other crews where they planted it crooked and they're using a stake and strap to pull it straight. Completely. So anyway, this is our version of the world. The one limiting factor, if you're a company doing residential, light commercial stuff, you want to get back on that site. So going back to take the straps off with our stewardship pruning program, it's a great time to pull stakes and do the touch-up pruning. For us doing the big commercial jobs, we are going to be working this winter on some alternative systems because I don't want to go back and pull these. In some cases, the municipalities are not taking us up on the 5-year warranty. We are not obligated to go back. We need something that could just be like the wooden stakes down lower and different strapping system that could. The whole idea is to get it where there's something biodegradable so that it comes off on its own.
Ron, I've been using jute
Yeah,
because it's going to break in a year, and I want it to break in a year.
exactly.
This time next year, I want those gone. So if you did some sort of stake that would,
Yeah,
and the jute, I know the jute's going to fail, and when it fails, that's when I want it to fail.
yeah,
So by that time, the tree should be established.
yeah.
So yours will be, but these others,
But we want this, okay? We want this movement. So this system allows us to have that. I did a job out in South Dakota for, at the time, one of the owners of Waste Management, $5.1 billion guy. And the cemetery where all of his relatives were, like 15, 20 years ago, they had these floods out there for 2 years that killed all the trees they had, which weren't many. And they brought in 5 to 6 inch caliper B&B. The balls were this high. You're in a cemetery, folks. So we had to get that telescoping lull like construction forks to reach 30 feet over the tombstones and set it. So we tipped them on their side, cut the baskets off. They were this deep in the ball, and there was this much root system, and then there was 4 feet of ball behind there. We shaved it off. We cleaved them, tipped that root system onto the forks, hand dug the holes with an extraction side. We could reach in 30 feet, set them, and pull back and get them out. But we did 8 foot, 7 foot, and 6 foot posts, 3 of each. We stood on the pallet on the forks to drive the 8-footers. We spiraled them around the tree, and the caretaker there, after 1 year, was to take 2 stakes off. And the next year take 2 off, and the next year take 2 off, so that it would continue to flex and move a little bit, but we were progressively taking off the support system. But the whole idea is we want movement. So please don't ever rigidly stake these things so they can't wiggle. They need to. Other questions?
Same watering recommendations for that B&B as for with the brownie?
Oh God, no.
Okay.
No, don't ever confuse our watering recommendation is specific to legacy trees. When you dig that ball and burlap tree, and typically you got a little more of a reservoir down below, so if you overwater, it's got a place to go. When we do that scratch technique, there's nowhere for this stuff to go. If you're sticking a hose in that gator bag every night, you're gonna kill my tree. You can do it. So no, this thing is fragile. This has to have water, and a gator bag would work for this thing because it's all right here.
Yep.
But that's what scares me with this stuff. So if I could, I would do all my B&B that could handle. I would want to do them fall, where they're losing leaves. The leaves are hard and waxy when we put them in. They're going to drop leaves, and then they get that rooting period for a while where there's no competition. You plant this thing end of May, like 2 years ago when we hit 90s and windy, end of May, and it was that way all summer. Forget it. I don't know how you keep that alive. The container one, if you don't do what we just did to that tree, it might survive a drought better initially, but it's not got the possibility of long-term survival because of what you put in the ground with it. So.
Playing the game of trees.